Hello, everyone, and welcome back. Today we are looking at the Aethersprite Delta 7. So, everybody's kind of familiar with the Delta 7 because we got to see that in the Clone Wars, and here we have it. I'm going to look it up here in the Wikipedia. I know I've got it in a bunch of different books. Uh, One of the things I really want to mention is, we have a progressionary ship. So, whether you watch it in the movies, you see it in the Clone Wars TV show, and then when you even look at the toys, where things are kind of going from here. So let's kind of dive in here and then let's kind of go through the ship. So the Delta 7 Aethersprite Light class Light Interceptor, also known as just the Delta 7 Jedi Starfighter, um, was a starfighter model used by Kuat Systems Engineering using that very dagger design. Before the clone was designed before the Clone Wars. A variant of the Delta 7B was also used during the Jedi or by the Jedi during the Clone Wars. So that's that next generation here. The Delta 7 would also be used by the Alliance to restore the Republic in their early campaigns against the Galactic Empire. Um, Going down to our characteristics here, manufactured by Kuat uh, Systems Engineering, the Delta 7 Aethersprite class Light Interceptor was a Jedi-used starfighter that saw extensive action during the last years of the Galactic Republic. And it was designed specifically with the Jedi in mind. The Delta 7's designers worked with the Jedi Order to create a starfighter with fewer internal systems than other starfighters. The focus on making the controls as responsive as possible due to the Jedi's force-sensitive capabilities. And elite transport, it could accommodate a single pilot and the integrated astromech droid. Now, um, typically the droid was actually built into it, so it didn't have the whole body. Except for, again, we have Anakin Skywalker, who cannot help but tinker with his own personal fighter. Um, and he's always done that, even when he becomes Darth Vader. You notice that his starfighter will always be different from everyone else's because he's constantly tinkering with it. Um, let's see. Try to pick up where we left off here. As an elite transport, it could accommodate a single pilot, integrated astromech droid. As unlike other later starfighter models, the wings were too thin for a full astromech socket. Instead, a modified droid was hardwired into the socket on the vessel's wing, with its dome remaining intact, but its components plugged directly into the ship's computer, like I had stated before. The droid, therefore, would play an important part in assisting the pilot with navigating, damage control, and hyperspace travel coordinates. Unlike most ships in the galaxy, the Delta 7 did not feature a built-in hyperdrive, but instead relied on an external hyperspace transport ring that attached to the starship, allowing it to enter trans-dimensional realm. Despite this, the ship could still retain its speed of 1,260 kilometers per hour in real space, and uh, it was often painted red, the color which represented the diplomatic immunity of the Jedi. Um, so really, and I want to kind of point this out here. When you look at Obi-Wan had the base color. He was, for whatever reason, one of the few that did not change the color. He probably, I'll say it in this regard, he adhered to the teachings that there were supposed to be no forms of real ownership outside of his own lightsaber. But even there, he kept it very common to a lot of the other Jedi. I mean, he could pick up, a common lightsaber, and really that's how he kept it. He kept everything as a base. So when we get like in the Legos, or if you're looking for just building armies or whatever, if you wanted to find the models or whatever action figure version of the Delta 7, and you got the Obi-Wan Kenobi version of it. You got the plain Jane paint job that everyone would have started off with until they maybe modified it so they knew which one was theirs. Um, looking at the history of this, we have the Delta 7 entered the service with the Jedi Order prior to or during 32 BBY, which is before the Battle of Yavin. Qui-Gon Jinn operated a Delta 7, as did his Padawan Obi-Wan Kenobi. Yoda operated his own customized version and flew it on a mission to the Vegadar system. Try saying that one 3 times fast. 4 years later, Master Depa Dilaba, I'm probably murdering the name, flew a Delta 7 as part of the Hazard Squadron as escort for a relief convoy heading to Bromhalarch. Uh, she provided interference between the convoy starships and the attacking pirates. Again, some of these names are very difficult when you look at how it's spelled and how it's probably pronounced are two different things. Okay, in 22 BBY, Kenobi flew his interceptor on a mission to Camino, during which he discovered the existence of the clone army, being produced without the approval of the Galactic Senate. The bounty hunter, Jango Fett, served as the cloning template, and was also a suspect as a plot to assassinate Senator Amidala. The High Council ordered Kenobi to apprehend Fett and bring him to Coruscant for interrogation. Fett evaded arrest, but Kenobi managed to follow him to Geonosis. Once Fett became aware of Kenobi's presence, the two engaged in a drawn-out dogfight over Geonosis. I'm going to kind of skip some of this, and we really were kind of talking about everything that happened in Attack of the Clones. So behind the scenes here, we have the Delta 7, which first appeared in 2020 or 2002 saga film episode 2, Attack of the Clones. Now, once we get to let's see, were created Invasion of Naboo, however, 2015, 26 showed them before using the. Okay. So once we get to the the Clone Wars cartoon, they took the droid and then they moved it from the side, and then they modified the front spine of the Delta 7, and then they put in a spot for a droid there. So you have your standard astromech droid plugged into the ship right in front of the pilot. And then later on, when they start going to revamp the whole ship and then that becomes a different one, they move them back off to the side again. But then they, depending on what version you have, they might either be just plugged in again, or it might be a droid that could actually come out of there. As far as having the hyperspace ring, it's their stopgap. When you look at some of the toy series, though, because I do remember having picked up this many, many years ago, because it is a very cool ship. They actually had the front, which kind of shot away, so it was kind of like a modification that then gave it some better weapons that it could use for fighting, as well as a set of pop-up wings that we would later see in the Aida. Was it Aida 3, I believe it was called. So they took the liberty with the toys to kind of start doing a transition between the Delta 7 and the later designs. And then when it came to Anakin's, then they gave him some bigger engines, similar to that of what he had when he was doing pod racing, and then those engines also had the hyperdrive built into it. So, it all depends on where you're taking the stuff from. If you just take it strictly from the movies and then the show, that was a different progression. from what we saw in the toy line. So, um, everybody's got to figure out exactly what they want to consider canon because it does bounce all over the place. Um, so let's try and bring up, because I know you guys are looking at the stats, and I'm going to try to make sure that we get a picture of the ship so you can look at the beautiful ship here while I'm kind of reading this through. All right. Um, let's see. So, of course, this is going to be from the Jedi Order. For the Old Republic, we have the Starfighter scale, and it's only about 8 meters long. So it has a crew of 1 with the astromech droid. Um, let's see, no passengers, of course. We have 60 kilograms of cargo space, and as if you remember in the movie, the cargo space is actually in hatches that are right behind the pilot. So, which does make a lot of sense because, I mean, if you're going to be stuck in here for any time, it says it's got consumables for a week. He can kind of reach behind the seat there, grab some of his supplies that he needs. Cost, we have a cost here of about 180,000 credits brand new and 145,000 used. Both of them being black market. Has a hyperdrive of ×1 with the ring, although there are a couple different versions of the ring. So the one that we see here that you're looking at has only got the 2 engines. Later on, they have a set where it's got 3 engines on each side. Difference, but it's there. Let's see. We have maneuverability of 3D plus 2. So it's really agile as far as that goes, but it's also relying on the Jedi with their force sensitivity. I did pass up the nav computer. It does have an astromech droid that can store up to 10 jumps on it. Space, it has a speed of 8, so that's pretty standard for most fighters. Now here it's got a listing of a slightly slower atmosphere than what we have in our write-up there on Wikipedia. Wikipedia is really good for a lot of resource, but sometimes there are conflicts because people kind of add to it and take away from wherever they get their source from. Now, this is what's listed in the Star Wars West End Games book. Now, where they got it from or whatever, I think that they got that from Wizards of the Coast when they had put it in there, but I'm not 100% certain, so there are going to be some slight differences here. Has a hull of 2D plus 2, so a little bit better than standard. Has shields of 1D, so it is a little bit more rudimentary. But the other nice thing is your Jedis with the precognition that they use for fighting and everything else, usually they can avoid some of that, the needing of the shields. They can evade a lot better. Our sensor package, we have a passive scan at 2.5 kilometers, an active scan at a 4.5 kilometers, a active search at 6.5 kilometers, and a focus of 300 meters. And then we have our weapon system. So we do have 4 laser cannons, which is what I was kind of hoping to see because it's, in everything I've seen, it's got the 2 on the top side and 2 on the bottom side of the ship. So we have 4 of them, all fire linked. Fire control of 2D, so it has a rudimentary fire control computer, and it has a damage of 60, which is very outstanding, especially for the time frame of the ship. And it is considered a light fighter. Usually when Jedi start getting into trouble and they need the blasters, they need a fairly good size blaster setting. So when we're talking about our laser cannons here, if they have to resort to violence to resolve an issue, typically this is a military vessel, so it does make sense for them to have a good damage rating there. And in our note down here, it does require that separate hyperdrive ring in order to get into the hyperspace. Let's see. And it also says here, without the proper droid, the pilot suffers a negative 1D penalty to his astrogation skill check. So if he doesn't have a proper droid, or he hardwires something else up or whatever, he is at a disadvantage for trying to get there, or he may possibly end up somewhere he doesn't really want to get. which is a common thing. Um, and I know I've had it happen in my games where you fumble a roll and maybe you just end up in the wrong area. If you go back to some of my attempts at doing Star Wars role playing game in the past, it's happened a couple times where we just end up in the wrong area. People do just kind of fumble rolls or whatever else. So, um, like I said, as we're looking at this, there are different variations as they had progressed over time, but this is more or less the base fighter as we're looking at right now, and this is what we have. So, with that, thank you so very much for watching. I enjoy bringing this to you. I'm hoping you're still enjoying listening to me kind of go on about how these ships are. Um, there's a lot of creativity that have been poured out throughout the years for doing this. Some of the stuff is from the expanded universe and then trying to create things that just never had been shot or whatever else. Some of it's just for role playing games, some of it's for the extended universe books. And here we are all together trying to bring it all so everyone else can see the imaginations that have been used throughout the years. So we'll see you in the next video. Have a